Good morning. I'm going to ask everyone to take their seats, and we're going to go ahead and get started. The meeting of the Louisiana Tax Commission is hereby called to order. The meeting is being held at the office of the Louisiana Tax Commission at 1051 North 3rd Street, Suite 225, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The date is Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. The time is 10 a.m. Please call the roll.
Chairman Roussel,
Here.
Commissioner Leone,
Here.
Commissioner Romick,
Here.
Commissioner Guidry, Commissioner Frazier,
Here.
5 present and a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to move on to old business, the delegation of appointing authority.
Good morning. My name is Mark Falcon. I'm special counsel with the Division of Administration. With me, I have our HR director, Cheryl Schilling, and also our HR deputy, assistant director, Stephanie Fontenot. Between us, I think we can answer any questions that you may have. We're here to talk about a technical issue, but it's an important issue for you to understand, and let me characterize it in this fashion. Under the civil service system, and most of our employees here at the Tax Commission are civil servants serving with classified status. Our HR division at the Division of Administration handles the HR functions and all the personnel matters and such. So that's why we're here on behalf of, we're representing y'all by virtue of that relationship whereby we do back office functions of a human resources nature. Under the classified service in the civil service system, we have a concept called appointing authority. And appointing authority basically means who has the power to hire and manage, discipline, sign personnel actions, whether it be promotions, reallocations. We're going to be coming up in a couple of months here with performance evaluations and so forth. So there's a question about who has the authority to sign and process those types of transactions. And the way it works is that the statutes which created the Tax Commission actually grants the authority and the power to this board, the Tax Commission as a whole, to the 5 members, to serve as appointing authority. Again, appointing authority meaning who signs documents, who processes disciplinary actions, onboarding, hirings, things of that nature. It's best practice and quite common throughout state government for a board like this, rather than to handle matters as a board in an open public forum many times, to instead delegate that authority, very common to the chairman of the board, as well as to the executive director, CEO, or highest level person that handles matters on a day-to-day operation. So what we're here today to talk about is that power, that authority, and whether or not you as a board would prefer to and would authorize a delegation of that authority. And again, what I'm proposing from a best practices standpoint would be a delegation to the chair. And we've talked to Mr. Roussel about this previously, but also separately and distinctly, it would be a delegation to Michael in his capacity as administrator. Again, the statute defines who is the appointing authority. You are the appointing authority. The law also allows you to delegate that appointing authority. So I have a board resolution for you to sign relative that delegation to the chair, separate board delegation, delegating that responsibility to Michael, and then so we have the 2 resolutions, and then we have actual delegations by authentic act, which means that it's notarized and so forth to memorialize the action that is taken here by you as a board.
Just to clarify, today as it exists, the board, the entire 5 members of us have the power to actually hire and fire employees.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. In fact, you alone have that power and authority. And think of it in this perspective. And we're here now with May, and of course, many of you took over a few months ago. We previously had, under the prior administration, a delegation of this nature to the chair and also to the administrator. Think of it in a practical matter, the day-to-day affairs, things that need to be signed, hiring documents, promotional documents, reallocations, all of those things need to be signed and approved over here by someone. Typically it would be by Michael. and it goes over to Stephanie and Cheryl. They make sure that everything is in order. A lot of times we prepare the documents for you and we just get the signatures, and then they would process those documents for you. So again, this is something that we see quite frequently and has been the history and the practice here by the Tax Commission, and I would encourage you to comply with that, or have more discussions, whatever you need to do. But there's a practical component to it, because if we had to convene a meeting, create an agenda, post the agenda in a timely fashion, have a debate, y'all got a lot of visitors over here. That sort of stuff generally can slow things down. And many times you need to act on a personnel matter quickly. So that's why we recommend that it be done in this fashion.
Any questions by members of the commission? Any objection or any discussion? I'm going to ask that this be deferred until a future date. We're still learning what we're responsible for and what we're not. And out of respect to the fellow commissioners, instead of them passing it to me and then me passing it on to Mike, and no disrespect to Mike, to Ms. Mathern, the LTC administrator, we're just going to leave it as it is with the board as it exists today, and then we'll take it up at a later time.
Okay, then that's your option. So I think we've provided, I'll provide Mike with the updated versions of these. Again, there's 2 resolutions, 2 delegations. Okay.
I'm going to ask for a motion to defer this item. I have a motion to defer. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion is deferred. Thank you.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is the presentation of the 2023 LTC ratio studies of commercial property.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Jeff Crosby with the appraisal section of the Tax Commission, along with Mike Allen, the Assistant Director. We're here today to present you the results of the 2023 Commercial Improvements Ratio Study. It was for tax year 23, all parishes except Orleans. It was 24 Orleans. The Tax Commission is charged with performing a ratio study every year, except on rare occasion like this year where we have 1,000 appeals, we may have to do 2 ratio studies next year to make up for it. But the study consisted of our appraisers going out and appraising a number of commercial buildings in every parish. The number was determined by the size of the parish, the population, whether it was a small, medium, or large. We do those appraisals and then we check our value against the assessor's value. We have a couple of metrics, the median and the COD, that we use to gauge accuracy and uniformity. And if the assessors are within those metrics, the guidelines, then everything is okay. And I'm here to say that all 64 parishes this year were within the guidelines. The results of the study show that everybody's doing fine. The assessors and the taxing bodies were all notified of the results and of today's hearing.
Thank you. Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the report?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the report as given.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is passed. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? We have a motion that we approve the minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion is passed. Moving on, we have items to be consideration of change orders.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 316 change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve 296, place 18 in pending status, and deny 2. Staff requests approval of these change orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 296 change orders and place 18 in pending status and deny 2 for reasons given by staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today we have a total of 13 prior pending change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve all 13. Staff requests approval of the prior pending change orders.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve all 13 prior pending change orders as staff has requested.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. We will now move on to the appeals. Mr. Hoffman.
You'll be testifying in any of the appeals this morning. You'll stand up. I'll administer an oath. I'm going to swear you in. I'll indicate to you individually to affirm the oath, and I'll ask you to state your name. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, full truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Affirm the oath. Simply say, I do. I do. Thank you. Edward McCoss back here. Y'all have a seat. Appraisers, I'm going to administer an oath to you. If will unmute and turn your camera on, I'll indicate to you individually to affirm the oath. Paul, there we go. All right, appraisers, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? George?
I do. George Wallace.
Luke?
I do.
Paul?
I do.
Josh?
I do.
Mark?
I do.
And Danny?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
Good morning. If you haven't already done so, please use this time to mute your cell phones, please. Thank you. The first appeal we'll take up this morning is the appeal of Edward J. Lacoste versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-72018.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, well, again, my name is Edward Lacoste. The property is at 5800 Vicksburg Street. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to discuss the matter. Just briefly to give you a background, in tax year 2021, the property was appraised for $528,000. I requested the city reduce it to $390,000. They rejected. Appealed to the state, came to the similar board, and they provided a state-funded appraisal at $370,000, and that was awarded. So at that time in 2021, I was pleased that the state had reduced the appraised value of house to below what I had asked for. In 2024, this tax year, the city of New Orleans appraised the property at $565,000. I again asked for them to reconsider and drop it to $390,000. They rejected that, which is why I'm here today asking for the state to look at the matter. Of interest, however, in the rejection letter they sent me stating that they felt the property was valued at $599,000, $588,000, excuse me. The appraisal attached had a value of $388,000. In all honesty, I didn't notice that till I was reading it in the hall just now. It conflicts with the cover letter that said that the property was assessed at $588,000. So that's an interesting point that I don't quite understand. The state, however, went ahead and funded an appraisal for the property and came back with $450,000. In all honesty, that's a value that I'm fairly satisfied with. I think that falls at least within the reasonable range of where I felt the property should be settled at. Just a couple of more notes of interest. The city appraisal did not taken to the fact that I have an easement through the property, all the lots in Lakeview, which is where this property is located, are the same size. I have a Bell South easement, so I cannot really use the majority of the backyard, which in my mind is a significant devaluation of the land property, which was not considered. It was, however, considered in the state's assessment. Another fact that it was not considered by the city's assessment is the fact that my house is right up against the 610. If I measured it, it's probably from the fence on the 610, which is adjacent to the exit ramp, to my side door is 60 feet at best, right? And so in addition to the obvious noise problems that run down the value of the house, it actually has been hit by gunfire 3 times. And so, you know, I'm in a position where when I go to sell the property out of any ethics or probably legal requirements, what has ever happened to this house that's unusual? It gets hit with bullets on a regular basis. I shouldn't say regular, it's only been 3 times. But again, that's something else that I really do feel drives the value down. The comps used on these appraisals none of them were adjacent to that degree. They were generally within a block or 2 of the interstate, but as you know, with noise, every foot is a big difference. And certainly having a house between you and the gunfire does add some value as well. So that said, that's really all the background that I had. I appreciate your time today. And again, I'll restate that I would be satisfied with the value that the state appraiser gave at $450,000. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. We'll hear from the New Orleans assessor and then we'll come back with questions.
Good morning, David Mejia, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. I do want to apologize. It's actually, I noticed the same typo. It is a typo. It's 588, 580 is the value that was confirmed, and it was written on the back addendum page incorrectly. I believe it was, I'm sorry, I said 580, I believe it's 588. 588 was the value, and the typo in the back, I apologize, but I found that as well in reviewing for this. So I actually had that typed up as well to disclose. The issue we have here is that we've acknowledged this is a really close proximity to the sound wall, to the interstate, and we understand that there is an easement that I do feel it's affecting the value a little bit. We've have a couple of differences here. Our appraisal, the appraiser, he went across the interstate to the Navarre neighborhood, which typically we wouldn't do. We felt maybe that was a little bit of an inferior neighborhood, but overall unit rates were actually similar, so we didn't do a location adjustment on that. If you look at his comp number 1, I believe it's is also directly next to the interstate, and their comp number 3 is 1 house away from an active railroad. Interestingly enough, the tax commission's comp number 3 is our same comp number 3, which is in close proximity to the railroad. And they made an adjustment of $55,000 for the neighborhood, which we felt just wasn't really accurate. Also, his comp number 2 of the tax commission appraisal, it's just a couple of houses down, and there was a very, very large adjustment. And the information we have is this property is approximately 17 years of age, post-Katrina built, and we have it as in very good condition. They have it in average. And so that also is some pretty big adjustments. With all that being said, we just couldn't get to the 450. I reviewed a number of different things in preparation for this hearing, and I found several sales that were averaging about 215 with things with properties close to railroads, interstates, other external adverse factors. Currently at 565,800, the property is valued at 213,03. However, due to the easement, I revised my value to $200 a square and came up with a revised value of $531,000. $531,000 is significantly less than our original value of $565,800. Significantly less than our 588 independent analysis completed for this hearing, but it's higher than the 450. We just felt the 450 we couldn't find, sales that really support that without making large adjustments.
We'd like to hear from the LTC appraiser, please.
Good morning. Luke Brewer with Louisiana Tax Commission. I appraised the property on 5800 Vicksburg, did a market approach. All three of my sales were within 0.2 miles of the subject. Comp one being at the opposite end of the block, which is not close to the I-610. Comp two, 5819 Vicksburg Street is as the gentleman from the assessor's office said, I'm sorry, I couldn't get your name. I apologize. It was about 3 houses away, but not as close as 5870 or as 5800 Vicksburg Street. I can't speak to 5635 Charles Place. I was trying to pull that up to see how close it was to the railroad tracks, but the subject property sitting next to an off ramp. And if I lived next to a property, I would not spend as much there as I would other places. And I think a 10% adjustment across the board is reasonable. We also did make a note of the utility easement, and we hit that $5 or $5,000 across the board, which is a very small adjustment and doesn't really greatly impact the overall indication of value. After doing the market approach, my value was $450,000 with 183,000 in land and 267,000 in improvements.
Thank you. Any questions by the commission?
Well, what happens is, look, I'm not a law enforcement officer. I don't know why it happens, but on a regular basis, you hear gunfire. It's typically people fleeing New Orleans in some type of related activity, and they're shot at as they're driving down the interstate. My home was hit 3 times. I no longer use the upstairs of the house for that reason. Now, do we get mugged on the street in front of my house? No, we do not. But there's a physical, danger of being hit by gunfire. You can look in the news, they've got people who've gotten their cars hit on the service road. So it's a very common knowledge. So I think it's kind of a little no-go zone, right? If I'm going to buy a house in the future, one house over from the corner, at least I got something between me and the street, because this gunfire is common.
Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. For LTC, just reviewing your comps, again, 5879 Vicksburg, understanding that's at the opposite end or the very end of that block between 610 and I don't remember the cross street there, but 5819. So to confirm, your adjustments, you cite the neighborhood for the tax property as neighborhood I-610, but with those 2 other addresses on the same block, you're adjusting for neighborhood without citing I-610, even though it's within the same block. Can you confirm your comp 1 adjustment of 85,400, which you're saying I think is 10%?
Correct.
And the same with 5819?
Correct. It's a 10% adjustment across the board. Although they are in the same block, comps 1 and 2, neither are adjacent to the I-610 corridor as the subject is. I also got a chance to look at 5635 Charles Place, comp 3, and it is about 4 parcels away from the railroad tracks. I think that because the subject is sitting right up next to it, even though the other comparables are close to what's called an external obsolescence, they are not as impaired as the subject is.
And to speak to your condition, you have the taxpayer property as average.
Correct.
And then your adjustments to the comps, which are all excellent. You've got comp 1 an adjustment of almost 171,000. Again, same block. Comp 2, same block, an excellent condition adjustment of 100,000. And then comp 3, an adjustment of 110,000. Can you speak to your basis for an average to an excellent and the amount of adjustment that's been given there?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So the average condition that I gave to the subject property is based on my exterior inspection of the subject. I have no physical evidence of what the interior of the subject could be, but I'm making what's called an extraordinary assumption that the interior is similar to the exterior. You could possibly go average to very good. As far as the LTC appraisals go, we typically do not use the condition good rating as to be consistent with the condition ratings we're finding on the MLS. However, the adjustments made for the conditions of the comparable sales, all three were listed in the MLS as excellent condition. And typically we do a 10% adjustment per tier. So from new to very good, from very good to average, from average to fair, etc. And so what those are 20% adjustments because there's a two tier from the excellent to the average condition, with very good being in the middle.
And one more, sir, I appreciate your patience with this.
Not at all.
On your comp 3, 5635 Charles Place, could you confirm that your adjusted value on that is 444,400?
It looks like it. I can double check the math real quick, but I believe that is correct.
Okay, and then for the assessor's office, I believe you had similar comp with a
yes, we-
value of almost 598,000.
Yes.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions by the commission?
Mr. Chairman, could I speak?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's David here once again. I just double checked, the comparable, 5635 Charles Place. It's one house away from the railroad track. So I'm looking at an aerial of it. So I just want to clarify that for the record, because I'm looking at it, since Mr. Brewer had said that, on the record. I'm looking at an overhead. It's definitely, it's one house and then it's his house.
He is correct. My cursor went across the street, and there are a couple more streets on that side, but he's correct. I looked again, and my cursor was on 5630, not 5635. I do apologize.
Thank you. With that being said, there was just one other point that I just wanted to touch on. We have to use condition for properties. We can't blanket everything as average condition, especially if we know properties. So when we look at a property that's built post-Katrina, 17 years old, it typically doesn't go to average. Can it? Of course it could. But the majority of these would not be average. They would be very good, if not excellent, in most cases. Our office, we cannot just blanketly just put everything at average. We would get slaughtered. It wouldn't be fair to everybody. So we have to use a condition criteria, and that's it. So I just put that out for the record, because if you just put it at good to very good, eliminate this one condition or location adjustment, I mean, I feel that my offer of going to $200 a square at 531 is more than fair. Interior properties without external obsolescence typically sell at around $250 to $265 a square. So we're considering its location, and more in my eyes, in preparation, I consider the easement more issue for me. And that's why I felt that it needed to be knocked down from the concluded value of 588 that our independent analysis came in at.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, in looking at the similar comparable, the average of the assessor and the LTC comes in at 521,100. Looking at all sales, the average of assessor and LTC combined comes in at 526,365. Based on so many variables that have been presented, I'm making a motion to find the commonality there for a total value of 520,000, land at 183,000, improvements at 337,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Thank you.
The next appeal we'll take up on the docket is the appeal of Byron Monts versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-75016.
Good morning. If you don't mind speaking directly into the mic, thank you.
I spoke to David yesterday by phone, and if I understood him correctly, when I first appealed this issue, is I was just requesting that when I first appealed this issue, I requested that the property be assessed at the 2023 amount and that the tax amount remain the same. If I understood David correctly, that is what he's agreeing to now.
Yes, sir, that's correct. We have come to an agreement, Mr. Muntz, we spoke yesterday, and we do have an agreement, in preparation for this, just for the record, we didn't actually lower our value, it's more of a correction. In reviewing this, we found the properties to be, classified in the wrong neighborhood. And so the adjacent neighborhood was at $5 a square foot. The neighborhood it was supposed to be in is at $3. So we put it at historically where it's been at, and we've confirmed that, and we've reached an agreement. And I can read out the docket numbers. It's 3 different dockets, but one of them is a bulk parcel. It has 2 different addresses. And I can give you those amounts if needed.
We're
Okay,
gonna need those amounts.
you got it.
And we're gonna do them one at a time, so.
Yes. Okay, so first docket number is 23-22-175-016. The value we have agreed to on is 9,400. I can give you the address. I don't have the lot numbers in front of me, but that's the docket number to that one. Gotcha, understand. So this is a unique case. So these are bulk properties, so they have the same parcel number. So I don't have the lot differently. I do have the address though for the 9,400. That would be ending in 801. 1125801 Copernicus. That's 9,400.
Okay, and the taxpayer, you agree to that value?
If everything works out to be 2023, we're all in agreement.
We have an
Let me
agreement.
let me just say something. The tax bills have Copernicus addresses on them, but Copernicus Street has not existed in over 75 years. It's a strange situation. There's 9 lots, 7 of them, half of it is in Jefferson Parish, half of it's in Orleans Parish. There's no roadways, there's no sewage or water service. Some of the lots are landlocked. So it's a unique situation.
Yes, it is. Mr. Muntz, he owes me a sandwich because we worked very hard on this yesterday. So I told him I'm holding his feet to the fire on this. It's a very unique situation on this for sure. But we are reverting the back. We have already changed our next year values, and the values have been updated.
What happens with the 2024? Are some of those charges reversed, or I've already paid them?
I'll have one of my colleagues explain the change order affidavit to you outside. We talked a
Okay.
little bit about that out front, but you'll get a revised bill.
We have an agreement if it's the same as 2023.
I make a motion, Mr. Chair, to accept the address of 1125801, whatever the street might be named. I believe it was
No,
maybe a
that street.
situation of Rupp or Copernicus, whatever it might be. at the taxpayer's requested value, to which the assessor has agreed at $9,400.
Okay, we have a
Agreed.
motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
The next appeal we have is the appeal of Byron Mons versus Assessor Errol G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-75017.
Good morning, once again, David Mejia, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. This is the property at 1125902 Copernicus. The value, we have agreed upon is 6,200.
Does the taxpayer agree with that value?
I agree.
We have an agreement between the assessor's office and the taxpayer. Do I have a motion?
I have a motion to accept the agreement between the taxpayer and assessor for 6,200 on land, 6,200 total.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, just a question of clarification. I have the address on this docket as 1125701, not 901. I had the 901 as a joint with the previous docket.
Actually, there's 4 tax bills. And two of the tax bills, I believe the 803, they may have similar addresses, although none of the addresses are relevant.
Look, I
I'm
think
going
there were
from
two
memory.
on the last docket.
There should have been 2 on the last docket.
Correct. So we're gonna go back and correct that one to make a motion to accept it. This one in front of us today is the one ending in assessment. The property is located at 1125902.
That's what I have is ending in docket number 017. That's,
Okay, so we're gonna do this one, then we're gonna go back to the one we just had to make sure that we're correct. Okay, so we have an agreement between the assessor and the taxpayer on this one at $6,200.
that's what I
Agreed.
showed you.
Agreed.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, the motion to accept the agreement with the taxpayer and assessor for 6,200 land, same 6,200 total.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion is adopted. On the previous one, there was subject property with 2 addresses on it, 1125801 and 1125901. Two properties, I believe. Agreed to the value of 9,400. I assume that's one of the lots.
That is correct.
And are we agreeing to the value of the second?
Agreed.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's the same docket, David Mejia, once again, same docket number 23221750116. That address is 1125901 Copernicus, and that value is 12,400.
So we did one of the lots for 9,400, and we're asking agreement on the next lot for what value?
12,400.
And the taxpayer agrees to that value?
Agreed.
Any questions from the commission? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the assessment of 12,400 on 1125901. The taxpayer is requested.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on this motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Next, we have the appeal of Byron Mons versus Assessor Errol G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-75018.
David Mejia again, once again, this will be a similar situation. The docket number 23221750118. The address on that one is 1125701 Copernicus, and the value we've agreed upon is 8,000.
Does the taxpayer agree to that value?
Agreed.
Okay. Is there any question from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I have a motion, Mr. Chairman, to accept the taxpayer and assessor agreement on $8,000 land, total of $8,000.
And there's a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you. Thanks. Did you say I need to see someone with your office? Thank you.
The next appeal we have on the docket is the appeal of Paul D. Garner versus Assessor Errol G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-72076.
Okay. Right.
Good morning.
Morning.
Go ahead and get started.
All right. Okay, so, I, am in appeal of my taxes. Basically, I, in disagreement with the fact that my, taxes, the assessed value of my building has gone up close to, $75,000 in 1 year. I submitted a number of comps to the LTC and to the Board of Review with Orleans Parish. And as it turns out, it looks to be that my assessed value of my property is quite a bit different from the average of the comps that I submitted. The way I figured it, my property was assessed at around $211 a square foot. And the comps I sent in were about $174 a square foot. To note, there is a piece of property 6 doors down from me, very similar duplex like mine is, larger by about 180 square feet, assessed at 292, and mine was assessed at 357. Their property or their improvements didn't go up any. Both of our lands went up from 88 to 110. I'm just trying to get, in my opinion, what would be fair taxes. I don't mind paying my taxes. I just want them to be what everybody else is paying.
Thank you. New Orleans Assessor's Office?
David Mahia, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. The property is 734 Navarre Street. The quadrennial value came up at 357,200. The Board of Review affirmed that number, 357,200. The tax commission's value is 282,500. Our independent value was 352. In preparation for this, I did find some movement, and it's a little bit higher than the tax commission, lower than where we're at, and I'd be willing to make a recommendation of 305,000 total land and building.
Okay, can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Paul Bennett with the Louisiana Tax Commission. I personally appraised the property at 734 Navarre Street with a undisputed land value of 110,000, improvement value of 172,500, for a total value of 282,500. This was accomplished primarily through the sales comparison approach, with 3 comparables, all from either the subject's immediate neighborhood or adjoining neighborhood of East Navarre. The subject was given an average fair condition rating due to physical deficiencies that were noted during an exterior walk around of the house. Most of it was, rotten fascia, rotten wood, peeling paint, just a significant amount deferred maintenance, and that's why we went with a blended condition rating of average fair.
Thank you. Any questions about? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the assessor's reduced value of 305,000, which would be 110,000 for the land, 195,000, excuse me, for improvements. I note that there's one comparable in the neighborhood, 831 Hidalgo, both by assessor and LTC, at an average of 325,000. The average of all sales by assessor and LTC is 318,000. thus substantiating the fairness, in my opinion, of the 305,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion?
I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just trying to understand. Is this how it would be revalued at 305?
Yes, that would be correct. The LTC value would be where it would be set at.
Okay, so I guess I don't understand is how we can set it at 305 based on another house that's bigger than mine in the same condition that's assessed for less. It doesn't make sense to me.
What our job here is to take in all the comps that are provided and information and make our best value to it. You as a taxpayer have a right to accept that value or not. If you don't, you can appeal it above us to the Board of Tax Appeals. And this is what we do. We looked at the New Orleans appraiser, we listened to your information, and we looked at our LTC appraiser, and we come up with a recommendation of what we think is a fair value for the property.
Okay.
Getting back to the motion, is there any further discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
All right. Thank you.
All right, next we have the appeal of Lawrence D. Cohen versus Assessor Errol G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221729090.
Good morning.
Morning, Your Honors.
We're not your honors, we're just commission
You
members.
look
But nice.
honorable to me.
That was nice. Nice compliment, but not for us. So go ahead and get started.
Well, I drove up from New Orleans, so I'm going to give you just if you would permit me, just a couple of minutes, how I wound up here. Background on the property. I bought the property in 2000, owned it during Katrina, house got ruined, rebuilt the house. My valuations have steadily increased over the years. And then I got my assessment for 2024, and my property went up 42%, which I didn't understand. I looked at the property, both properties adjacent to mine. The neighbor, as you look at my house to the left, Mr. Bouzon, his property value, other than land, his improvement went up 0. The property to the right of mine, as you look at the house, Mr. Truxillo, brand new construction, his assessment on his home went down $11,000. Mine went up $200,000. So I went to the Delgado hearing, okay? And Your Honors, my wife and I went, good faith. I had my newspaper from the day before, the Times-Picayune. I still read the newspaper every morning. And on the front page of the Times-Picayune, it said, Orleans Parish property values down 2%. So I've got the newspaper telling me the values have gone down, but the tax assessor says mine went up. So my wife and I went into Delgado. I swear, we sat down in front of this woman. I talked for 1 minute. I just wanted to know who looked at my property and how it went up 42%. She called security on me. Okay, come on. I'm an attorney. I don't deserve treatment like that. All right, so then we went to the next step. I sat in the room with 4, I think maybe a woman and a gentleman and whatnot. They sat there like mummies. I said, who did the assessment on this? Nothing. They wouldn't tell me a word. So I'm here today to plead my case. Now, Mr. Luke Brewer, I think he's employed by the state as an assessor. I spoke with him and he went to my property. So I know he looked at my house. He actually said my property is worth less because of damage, because of rain. I sent him pictures. I have damage to my house because of a recent storm. His assessment seems reasonable to me. So, I mean, that's my evidence today. I don't understand how it went up. It's the same house, Your Honors. I've done nothing to the house. It's the same house I've lived in all these years since Katrina. And I don't know why all of a sudden it took a spike when neither of my neighbors did. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
New Orleans Assessors Office.
Good morning, once again, David Mejia, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. The property address, 7334 Amber Street, it's the Lake Shore neighborhood. Our life would be simplified as assessors if we could do things on a percentage basis. We hear that argument quite a bit. We're in charge of valuing properties. Certain properties may change for other characteristics, they may not, but it's not done uniformly on a percentage basis. It would be a lot easier, but it's not done that way. The value that landed for this quadrennial reassessment was $913,600. That value was affirmed by the by the Board of Review at $913,600. Our independent analysis completed for this hearing was $992, actually higher. The tax commission came in at $700,000. The biggest issue we have here with the tax commission is that the property it's a newer post-Katrina built property, and if would have used anything remotely close in that age, they would have been right around 913.6 where we're at. We came in higher. It's a substantial piece of real estate. It's 3,700, almost 3,800 square feet. We feel that the 913,600 is a fair number. If we look at, like I said, if the tax commission would have just used any property that was younger than 63, 68 years of age, they would have probably come in a lot closer to our value.
Thank you. Can we?
Good morning, Luke Brewer with the Tax Commission. I appraised the property on 7334 Amber Street. The comps that I selected were all three within the subdivision, all within 0.2 miles of the subject, two of which, comps 2 and 3, being within less than 0.1 mile of the subject. The appellant or taxpayer did mention that there was some water damage. He provided photos that I included in the report. That damage is not really significant. So that adjustment was made in the car storage portion because it was in the garage. And so instead of adjusting $10,000 for the difference between a garage and carport, I only adjusted $5,000. My gross living area adjustment and condition rating are all bracketed. Sales 1 is in excellent condition. Sales 2 is very good, like the subject, which the assessor's office and I agree upon. And sales 3 is in average condition. So I have 1 negative adjustment, 1 positive adjustment. All 3 sales are right on top of the subject. They're similar in condition, similar in size. And I have a tight range that ranges between 671,900 and 778,430. With that in consideration, I came to a value of $700,000. 225,500 or 300 with, excuse me, being the land value, and 4,440 or 444,700 being the improvement value.
Thank you. Any questions by the commission? Mr. Cohen?
I apologize. Can I ask the assessor a simple question? And I feel sorry for the gentleman who came before me, but the house next to me, Mr. Assessor, is absolutely brand new construction, top of the line, built within a year or two of mine, way bigger than my house. Okay, he's got pools, he's got gas lighting everywhere, he has a carport that's built in and all that, way bigger than mine, way newer than mine. Mine's assessed for more than his is. How is it possible that a bigger, newer, nicer house is assessed at less than my house that's built post-Katrina? And then that has almost, what, 16 years of wear, 17 years of wear on it? How is that possible? How is there any equity in that?
Does the New Orleans assessor want to address that?
In preparation for this hearing, I prepared for the 7334 Amber Street. The assessor's office does have a hotline number. If the taxpayer feels that our property is undervalued, or if it's being, if it's something wrong with it, we have a hotline. He can call that number and report it and indicate that he feels this value is out of line. We get many calls of fraudulent homestead exemptions, properties that are undervalued, miscategorized, they're being used as commercial, they're residential. We have several reasons why a property could have changed, not changed to the tax recipient may have had an appeal, they may have come in and presented documentation, I don't know. But we don't do things on percentage basis. So our values will fluctuate. There will be a fluctuation. There's not a static number.
He's not
Thank you.
suggesting, Your Honor, that I rat out my neighbor. I mean, he's suggesting that I call the tax commission on my next door neighbor and say
It's
they were
not-
undervalued?
It's not the tax commission, it would be the city of New Orleans
Oh,
if you had an
okay.
issue. And once again, I'm just reminding you, we're not judges, we're not honest. I know it's not a habit being an attorney, but please don't address us as your honor.
Are you
Okay, look,
suggesting?
stop.
Oh,
We're not gonna go back and forth like, you made your point. Is there any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for LTC. On the comparable property, 7312 Amber Street. So just to elaborate on that neighborhood, as I appreciated from your site map and knowing the location, there is a tremendous amount of green space directly across from the taxpayer in 7312 Amber Street. Can you speak to the site and no element of adjustment to the site square footage or even the site being comparable on Amber as compared to Sardonyx, which is a block off and not facing that park?
The site sizes for comparable cell number 3 and the subject are within 1,000 square feet, which is similar enough. And typically, the Louisiana Tax Commission has made the stance that we're not going to make an adjustment for sites that are smaller or larger than that 1,000 square foot range. So if it's within that 1,000 square feet, we typically don't hold an adjustment. Now, the subject is across the street from a park. You could consider a view adjustment. However, I don't have anything that would support a view adjustment. No match pairs analysis or anything of that sort.
Thank you. And for the assessor's office, your comps include two properties that are on the other side of what is now Allen Toussaint Boulevard. I know relatively close, but totally different feel for and maybe age of construction in that area. Can you speak to your two comps 2 and 3?
Yes, sir. Mr. Romig, one of the big reasons that the appraiser expanded the sales search is because of the age of the house. In the Lakeshore neighborhood, there are some new constructions, but they're not, or I should say newer, post-Katrina built. But a lot of them are older. They are similar to what the comps that the tax commission used. And that's really the contention here. It's a newer house. It's 17 years old. It's a newer build, and they just command different price points than these older 60, 50, 70-year-old homes. And that's the reason that they expanded to an alternate neighborhood. We felt that the neighborhood across in Lakeview, it's an alternate purchasing options for prospective buyers in the market. It yielded a similar unit rate that we felt was within reason. And that was the reason we expanded to that neighborhood.
Any additional questions from the commission?
I have just one question for the parish assessment today. Were y'all able to enter the home and do a visual?
No,
Of the
sir.
taxpayer?
No, sir. We typically do not go in unless we are requested to go in, or if there's something that shows up on the appeal that we feel we'd like to verify if there's a square footage discrepancy of some sort, we may request to go in. In this instance, we didn't have a reason to go in.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, struggled with this one since there aren't any common comps. Certainly the Sardonyx and the Amber, those three are the most location-wise comparable. Certainly the Amber with the park element being comparable. That LTC appraisal was at $778,430. Again, my consistent approach, looking at the average of all of those three, the average comes in at $887,000. The average of all sales comes to 850,000. I find, once again, there are huge variances between the assessor and the LTC. As such, I try to find the middle ground. With all due respect, sir, in understanding neighboring properties, but I don't have that information available, so I'm going off of what I have. I'm coming up with a total value of 850,000, land at 255,300, improvements at 594,700.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Charles Simonson versus Assessor L.G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-77038.
Good morning.
Yes. Charles Simonson. Okay, that's fine.
Good morning. You can go ahead and get started.
Good morning. As an aside, I believe there was an appeal process through the city. I was out of town. They gave me that it could be done remotely with a phone number, which I did call, and no one ever answered. So, though supposedly it could be done remote, it could not. They just never answered the phone. Otherwise, very short and sweet. I'll go with Mr. Gillespie's assessment. That's your assessor. The assessment by the city has a lot of contingencies. They state this is contingent on. They're not looking in the property. They're not seeing the damage to the property. They're not seeing structural problems with the property. And as I said, I think the last time I was here 4 years ago, I don't understand if they're that short on manpower to do assessments, why when you have 4 identical properties on the same block, why they spend time taking each one separately and assessing it and come up with 4 different numbers on it close to each other. But short story, fair market value from Mr. Gillespie is fine with me. Thank you.
Okay. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Good morning, once again, David Mejia, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. The property is 8014 Belfast. It's in the Fontainebleau neighborhood. The value, excuse me for 1 second. The value for the quadrennial was set at $465,600. The Board of Review upheld that value. They affirmed it at $465,600. Our independent analysis came in at $457, and the tax commission came up at $345, which is actually higher than the taxpayers' requested value of $380. We just feel that some of the adjustments in the tax commission was just slightly high. We do feel that there is some movement on here. We're not a hard number. We could probably split the difference. The one thing that we did figure out and looking at the tax commission value that every comp in there, it's the wrong photo, it's the wrong house. I don't know if that was, that always questions me sometimes, what happened there. But we do realize there is some movement in there. There was just a few adjustments they made that we typically don't account for. In-ground pool, a brick patio, another in-ground pool. I mean, these were pretty large adjustments that we typically do not make in our analysis. We don't value them. We don't add value for them in valuing the real estate. So We just feel that that value was a little bit south of where we're comfortable at. But we do have some movement on that, on that property.
You want to tell us what your movement is?
Yes, sir. 388, 500.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser, please?
Yes, sir. Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraised the subject property 8014 Belfast and used three comparable sales that are within the North Fountain Blue neighborhood. Apparently, the photographs are incorrect. I'm not sure what happened there. I apologize for that. But more importantly, the sales are justifiable sales and accurate and applicable to this particular appraisal. And luckily, we were provided with a copy of the appraisal that the assessor's office performed. And I was able to take a close look at that using the proper adjustments on their sales. I came up with a value of $366,000 utilizing their sales with the proper adjustments.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? No questions? May I have a motion?
I have a motion to agree on the assessor's new value of 61,500 in land, 327,000 improvements, total of $388,500.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Sorry, you want to say something?
You're gonna go with the assessors and not your own assessor?
That's what we have a motion on the table to accept the $388,000 value assessed.
And the 345 of your assessor? Who's taking?
That means
into
we're not
account the-
agreeing with our it means we're not agreeing with the value set by our LTC appraiser, which the board has the right to do.
Okay.
So we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
The next appeal we have on the docket is the appeal of Candace Doley versus Assessor L.G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221762212.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come and speak today.
Good morning.
Shall I start or are there questions? Yes, okay. Just to give you a little bit of background, I was here in 2022 for 2021 tax year, I believe. I might have those years mixed up, but I got a decision from this very body that adjudicated the tax value of my home at $405,000. That was just 2 years ago. I have been through this process almost every year appealing my tax assessment. I'm a little frustrated. I'm going to be honest with you. I have my 1-year-old here with me today because that's just the reality of my life right now. So thank you for fitting me in. I think this number is wrong. 485, which is, let me back up. The assessor came with a $740,000 assessment on my home. If I thought I could get $740,000 for my house, I would sell it. I have more problems with this house than I care to even rally off for you today. Every time it rains hard, my house floods. I have cracks in my foundation. My house is not in great condition. So all the comparables that the assessor's office may use, they're not relevant. They're not valid. In Broadmoor, I understand that there are the comps are all over the place. You might have a house selling for $800,000 that's down the street from mine. You might have a house selling for less than $400,000 that's right next door to mine. It depends on what's inside that house. And a lot of the houses that are selling for higher values have updated kitchens and bathrooms. I do not. They have pools in their backyard. I do not. I am only here asking for what's fair, what's reasonable, and what's based on the decision that this body made 2 years ago. I'll start there.
Thank you. New Orleans Assessor.
Good morning. It's still morning. Yes, good morning. David Mejia, once again, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. It's an interesting case. I did a lot of research on this property. The property is 4601 South Galvez Street. One of the big issues we're having here is that this property has a raised basement. When it was acquired with a raised basement completely completed. It was fully done, renovated. It was a small portion of it was storage. According to the MLS disclosures. That was in 2015, acquired in excellent condition for $450,000. So our initial value was based off of the basement square footage would have been 4019. The taxpayer presented a sketch indicating the basement to be non-living area. The supervisory staff of the office had a hiccup with that and didn't necessarily take it as gospel. Unfortunately, we had submitted the appraisal sketch and updated our square footage. And we came up with a revised value very similar to the tax commission based off of half of the square footage. And reviewing this, I asked a member of the staff to contact the property owner. Let's put this to bed once and for all. Can we go out and confirm the basement to be finished, living area, non-living area, and put this to bed? We were not rewarded that opportunity. I'm not sure why. And since we had a raised basement, it was completely finished, I would just ask the commission, if I could, that we can confirm the taxpayers actually stating that the basement is not complete, not finished, and not livable.
I can respond to that. There has been nothing done to my basement since I moved into that home in 2015 because it floods repeatedly. And because it's just, I don't have the money based on the amount of money that I'm paying in taxes and insurance. I don't have the money to invest in my basement. When I purchased the house, it was considered to be living area because it is heated and cooled. The AC unit is down there. There are vents down there. It is heated and cooled. That is why it is considered, when I purchased the house, to be a livable area. It's not livable. I sworn testimony, that area of my home is not livable square footage. I have submitted many pictures. Every time that I appeal to this body, to the assessor's office, I submit pictures of my basement. That is why I would not allow them to come into my home. I have a 15-month-old that you can hear in the hallway right now. I really can't afford to disrupt his day, disrupt his nap schedule, disrupt his feeding schedule so that you guys can come in and take pictures of my basement, which I have already submitted to you. I updated them. I updated them from the last time that I appealed it. I took more pictures. Guess what? They look exactly the same. They're the same pictures, essentially, even though they're new pictures, because nothing has happened in that space. That's why I would not let them in my house.
Chairman Roussel, one thing, it's a contradictory statement there. The taxpayers stating they've done nothing to the basement. If they've done nothing, then it's fully finished because the basement was sold as fully finished and the photos indicated to be fully finished.
It was sold as livable area because it was heated and cooled.
The photos indicate it is fully finished.
Okay, question, I have a question before we move on to the LTC appraisal. What was the value that was set in 2022 by this commission? Do you have that information?
I do not.
I do.
Chairman Rousseau?
Okay, so it was 405. We confirmed that. I just want to understand. So we set the value in 2022,
Yes, sir.
and in 2024, the assessor's going to say it's worth 740,000.
Yes, sir. The square footage that's the issue. So our square footage was based off of a finished basement. So the raised basement has been the consistent issue there. So
But in 2022, this commission met, we set a value of 405. I assume we eliminated, are you telling me we eliminated the basement for consideration in as livable?
we did eliminate it. It has been eliminated on all appraisals.
So y'all saying you don't agree with what this commission
I-
ruled, and y'all coming back and asking to raise it again?
Well,
Just,
for the
I'm
record, I'm
asking a
trying to
question,
get,
just
yeah,
be answer.
yes, sir. I'm trying to get just a few things for the record. So we have an appraisal, not including the basement. So I can't come in here and argue for a higher number. I'm trying to get some things for the record just to make sure we have this covered. So we don't have this again.
Well,
And
that should have happened after 2022 when
we
this board ruled,
We've requested.
when this board ruled and made a decision based on the information. So I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, we
Let's hear
requested.
from the LTC appraiser. It's frustrating because, once again, this board met, and I'm not questioning the past board, but met under all these circumstances, ruled on the information presented, and 2 years later, we got a value that's almost double.
Yeah, yes, sir.
That's not acceptable to me and not acceptable to, I
Yes.
think, the members of
Yes,
this
sir.
board.
If we would have been able to confirm it,
Yes, sir. Yes, taken this year to submit to the Board of Review.
Okay, let's hear from the LTC appraiser. Apologize, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I personally inspected the property, made an exterior inspection. I met with the property owner and we walked around the outside. I did it in 2020, I believe. And that was my value before, what you settled on. I'd got, my appraisal showed 280, wait, let me read this. $485,000 for the whole property. I believe the lot value was 100,800. As I appreciated, I have a copy of the assessor's appraisal, and he's at 480,000. That's 1% difference. I don't see there's a.
our revised value is 480. Yes, sir.
They gave me a revised appraisal of 480. I don't know 1% on an appraisal. Cause it could be just a pin.
In your appraisal of the 485 value you came up with, did you count the basement as livable area?
No, I did not.
Chairman Rousseau, if we would have been able to confirm it and walk it, we would have it. And I'm assuming, Mr. Bolton was not able to confirm that visually as well. So I'm just trying to get some things for the record. We really can't battle this, but I suspect this will rear again.
No, I don't think it's gonna rear again.
If we can get, it confirmed officially, because that confirmation of that basement square footage is not from our office. It was from a third party.
Okay. Any questions for the LTC appraiser? Or the assessor or the taxpayer?
Mr. Chair, just a question of clarification. So I understand, going back, I'm looking at the document, fair market value total by this commission in August of 2021, it's a total of 405,000. Taxpayers requesting 450,000. The assessor, while initially assessing at 740,400, is now agreeing to a 480,000. Are all of those facts correct?
Yes, sir.
I should say statements, my apology. So what you're presenting is an agreement to this square footage based upon this assessment at this point?
I am not at liberty to say we're accepting the square footage. I feel that in reviewing this, I feel that our office has an error that needs to be remedied sometime in the future. At this point, I can't battle it because we put it on paper, and I won't request a higher value.
May I? The reason I felt like I really made a concession here and even trying to negotiate at 450. I still think that's even too high. I said 450 simply because their number was so outrageous. I felt like I had to give something. But I really think it's closer to the 405 that this body adjudicated in 2 years ago. I really do. And I don't have a square footage number. I'm not the expert here on what the price per square foot should be. I just feel that based on what would be fair, what would be reasonable, what would be closer to what this body determined. And I do feel that this body has the authority, the capacity, and the ability to make a fair and reasonable decision on what that value should be. I don't want to tell you what it should be, but I do think even saying 450 is just not reasonable. I understand if it goes up from 405. That was 2 years ago. We're in a reevaluation period. I understand that. And I do believe that fairness and reasonableness should just be what determines the taxable assessment of my home.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Just one statement from Mayor, and that'll be my last statement, Mr. Russo, Chairman Russo. Prior hearings really have no relevance. There were prior lien date. There were 1/1/19 lien dates, used much older sales. And I'll just refer back to the property was acquired in 2015 for 450 with a totally finished basement, showing 4325 square feet on the listing and sale that was acquired at the time of purchase. That'll be my last statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And although I respect your opinion, what the decisions this board makes does mean something to us, and historical does mean something to us.
Yes, sir.
We're not going to keep doing this every 2 years after we've made a decision, have it come back up again and kind of argue the same facts again. So with that, I'm going to ask, if there's no other questions, can I have a motion from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, but first I would like to ask, just if you can, y'all get together on the square footage. Just let them get their information so they'll have it in. Unfortunately, in their line of work, you deal with people who don't give you the good pictures. It's just that way they will have the accurate stuff and they can say they've been through there. And it might keep us from coming back here if you can
I understand.
with them and with our own. I think it would help a lot. So I'm asking if you can do that. Now, based on the 2 appraisals that we've had on the square footage that we've agreed with, I'm gonna go with the assessor's office for 480, 100,000 for the land, and 379 to 100,800 for the land. I'm sorry, and $379,200 for them for a total of 480,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fraser.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Matthew George Creer versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-76042.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Claire
Go ahead,
Kreider.
get started.
First, I want to endorse the tax commissioner's appraisal of the improvement value performed by Mr. Laverne. That was for $617,700 at 261 per square foot. the reason I'm here today is I predict the assessor may argue that the comps used by the commissioner's appraiser are older, based on an exhibit that he produced. And so I want to throw another comp in the mix, and that is our next door neighbor, 5413, which I've discussed with the assessor previously. That is an identical house to me and my husband's next door. It was built at the same time, built at the same square footage, and it is assessed at 280 per square foot. So very, very similar to what your commissioner's assessor assessed the property at. So their building assessment next door increased 2% in 2023. Ours, in contrast, increased 18% in 2023. And the only reason I can think that that occurred is because we bought our home in 2022 we probably overpaid for it for personal reasons and things like that. I mean, it was what it was at the time, but, you know, to me, we have twin studies, so we can pair the genes and the environment. We've got a twin next door. Let's use that and go with a similar price as the house next door. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Good morning. Once again, David Mejia, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. The property is located at 5419 Laurel Street. We had a lot on the agenda today. Let's see here.
It's all yours.
Yes, sir. The initial value of this property through the quadrennial assessment was $965. The value was reduced to the board of review at $945. Our independent analysis landed it at $1,016,000, and the tax commission landed at $800,000. The biggest discrepancy we just have is that the property was just acquired and it's listed as excellent. And the tax commission put it as average. We felt if they would have just used a right condition, it would have been right where we're at. We don't really have a whole lot of argument other than they would have just put the correct condition. We would be probably very similar numbers.
Thank you. LTC Appraiser.
Yes, good morning. Joshua Laverne, LTC Appraiser. Mr. Chairman, I was not aware of that sale in 2022 at the time of my report. That would change my opinion of value. I made some adjustments having learned of that sale and them listing it as excellent condition. I agree with the assessor that it should be in excellent condition. My appraisal, having made those recent adjustments, would put the value at right at $1 million even. 182,300 for the undisputed land, and then 817,700 for the improvement. I apologize. I didn't know of the 2022 sale.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Hearing no question, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to go with the Orleans Parish assessment value of $945,000. It's $182,300 for the land, $762,700 for the for a total.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you all.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Fair Will Jr. versus Assessor Errol G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-76058.
Yeah, raise your right hand. You swear affirm this morning, don't give the whole truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Your name?
For a while.
Okay.
Good morning. You can go ahead and get started.
Hello, thank you for hearing my case. I'd like to present why I think my assessment should be significantly lower from what the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office submitted originally and then submitted after their appraisal. I submitted the exact same or 95% same report to them, to the Board of Review, as you were looking in front of you. It's a pretty detailed report, about 6 pages of text, dozens of date and timestamp pictures, 6 very detailed repair estimates, and I'd like to go through the reasons why I think the valuation should be significantly lower. There's been some strength in the market. It's been at the very high end of the market, and the assessor even admits this. It's new houses and renovated houses that are getting the good valuation. What's changed this year is interest rates have gone up massively, and anything that's not new or renovated is weak. This year should be down unquestionably from last year. Whatever number was given last year should be down unless you're new or renovated. Anyway, I have through my report, it shows it needs the house is extremely dated. There's a lot of repair and maintenance that hasn't been done. I went to get some quotes done, and I said to the contractors that came through, I was like, repair anything that might be called out as a material weakness or seller deficiency, anything that the buyer is going to use to knock down the price. And they came through with 6 estimates, excuse me, for $173,000. And then the system from which there's some quotes from the assessor himself. He even admits it. A significant number of home sales are new construction or recent renovations. While all sales impact the properties, older homes may not, and that have not been renovated may not see much of a change in value. Well, my change was up massively, over, I think around 60% is what they originally proposed. So the valuation methods I've used were comparable sale listings at the time that they presented me with their assessment, comparable assessments, my repairs and estimates that I just went over, and they include some still remaining Hurricane Ida damages and other issues. On the first table, I have 14 properties. They're all very close. I think they're all very similar. And when you adjust for the lot size at $30 per foot, I come up with $179 per foot, and that would value my house at $459,000. The second table takes the top 3 properties overall. And those properties I think are most similar to mine. Those come out, it's pretty close, $178 per adjusted foot at $457,000. That's a land value of $192,000 and a building of 200 improvements of $265,000, so $457,000. Next, I looked at when they gave me the proposed assessment, houses that were currently listed for sale right at that moment in time, $209 per foot. That gets you to $536,000. And that is 14.5% of what I'm asking for at that 457. But the market is extremely weak. And you've seen markdown after markdown after markdown, listings pulled off the market. I think the 14.5% reduction is very reasonable. The next thing, I have another table on some similar assessments in the neighborhood that are very close and very similar. They come out to $535,000 per foot. All these numbers are massively lower than what the assessor originally proposed, and then later with their appraisal. So the other items that I went through, I already went through for the deferred maintenance. The property is extremely dated. I have dozens of time and date stamp pictures. I hope everybody had a chance to look through them. You just can't argue the house doesn't need a lot of work. The house is extremely dated. The inside is far worse than the outside appears, and it just needs a massive amount of work. I think anyone that buys this house is going to have to do basically a gut renovation, replace major systems like a 25-year-old air conditioner on the old refrigeration. I've got code violations. I got holes in fencings around a pool. I've got a pool that needs to be redone that will immediately be called out. There's tripping hazards, et cetera. I'm surrounded by a large number of large apartment buildings, including one with a pool. I think I'm surrounded by well over 50 apartment and condo units. The police come by, there's trash all the time. One is owned by a very well-known slumlord in town that's had so many code violations, they almost made him sell it. The city did. I have a shared driveway. The property line goes right up the middle of the driveway, and neither of us own it. There's a scheduling issue. There's no gated off-street parking either. The house, if you were to go through it and look at some of the pictures, it's a low-end conversion of a duplex into a single. There used to be another address, and you can pull it up on the map, 1438 Toledano. My laundry room was a second kitchen. It's downstairs. You could tell it's a kitchen. There's some rooms upstairs where you could tell it was a duplex. The proper renovation, and to get a decent, even average valuation, it's going to need a gut renovation. I went through, I cite a couple articles showing housing prices are down. They're not up. There's two articles. There's one on the national scale, and there's one on the New Orleans scale. And it even shows metro prices were down 3.6% in the first half of 23. They were down more in Orleans Parish. We've had population loss. There's the crime's out of hand. There's been some improvement. It's still extremely dangerous city. And the basic services don't work. You've had sewage problems that are nonstop. And the city is a mess. And then I'd point out the process going through the assessor's office is flawed and extremely aggressive. I cited that case where he says it's skewed by new and renovated houses. The other thing was, I've got a quote from an article of him saying he even planned to contest his own assessment. This is the assessor, the head of the assessor's office, that's contesting the own assessment on his house because he thinks it's aggressive. I think that points out its aggressive system overall. And the other thing I would point out, unless you've owned a property in Orleans Parish and contested your taxes and gone in front of the assessor's office, you haven't tried to negotiate with them. I presented this exact same documentation to them, and they refused to talk about it. I said, what about these repair estimates? No comment. What about my comps? No comments. Did you look at my pictures? Well, we looked at a couple of pictures. And for those reasons, I think, there's one last point I would make out. Assessments, I don't believe, should ever be close to market peaks. If you get in a market like you are today, if you assess anywhere aggressively or even near the average where the market's coming down, everyone is over assessed. And that's what you're going to have for this coming year unless things change drastically. The market continues to weaken. All right, next I'd like to move on to the assessor's appraisal why I think there's some disclaimers in it that I think would automatically eliminate them. The appraisal from the assessor's office says, I have no bias with respect to the parties involved with this assignment. I believe the appraisal came from an employee from the assessor's office, and that is a factually incorrect statement. Here's the second one. For the purpose of this report, the appraiser assumes the interior of the property to be the same or similar conditions to the exterior. My pictures and my repair estimates prove that statement false. Again, because of that, I think the appraisal should be dismissed. And here's one more. The appraisal is based on the information available at the time of the appraisal. That is incorrect. They had all this information, my pictures, my work estimates and repair estimates and deferred maintenance, et cetera. They were not incorporated. There was another exhibit that says that the properties they used were all in similar condition. Well, that's incorrect. My house was determined to be average condition. 3318 Constance is classified as very good. That on its own, at 13 3318 constant should not be in there. The fact that it's in there and has a $41,000 adjustment factor, I think it's far too low. It shouldn't even been in there. 3821 Coliseum sold in much better condition, I thought, from the pictures I saw, which I believe were the most recent sale. It's all finished bathrooms. It's a nice separate laundry. It's a clean house layout. No walls need to be built. No walls need to be blown out or reconfigured rooms. It's not a low-end conversion of a double into a single. And the last comp that I would point out, 3921 Chestnut, was part of a sale involving a luxury developer who created a new high-end building on a cutout lot right next to it, and it sold for 1.25 million. The same developer, I believe, came back to the original property, 3921 Chestnut, and has massively expanded it and is going to sell it as a brand new or extremely renovated and extremely expanded house, and seeking a very high dollar amount. And last, I'd like to look at the overall process that happened here. I would go to the assessor's office, sends you their number, and it's based on a system. The assessor himself says the figures are too high. They're so high, in fact, he is challenging his own assessment on his personal house. I present the same data that I've shown you. They don't look at it. They look at a couple of pictures. I ask them about comps. They say there's no reply. I ask them about my work estimates. No reply. I go to the board of review. They basically say the same thing. And then I come here. It's only after that the Louisiana Tax Commission hires an independent, a true independent appraiser that comes out with a much lower number, that they come back. They finally are starting to negotiate, and they're still far too aggressive. Their appraisal does not incorporate my pictures or my work estimates, and so I believe their comps are less applicable versus the comps that I've used and the comps that the LTC appraiser has used. And then when you look at the LTC appraisal, it specifically includes in that appraisal all my pictures, all my work estimates. And then they specifically note, while we have not adjusted our numbers based on the work estimates, they are reflected in our comps. There's no such wording like that that comes out of the assessor's appraisal. And then last, I think my three comps are actually the best. They have not been adjusted. If you had time to actually look at those three houses, they're the most similar. And I know two of them, and maybe the third one, I didn't go by the third one. Once they were bought, people moved out and they were gutted, and to start all over to do a gut renovation, and massive sums of money are spent like my house needs. And that's my case.
Okay, thank you. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Good morning, David Mejia, once again, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. Just want to touch one comment. When we are doing these independent analysis, we are employees of the Assessor's Office, but we are never coerced. We are never asked to hit a number. We're never asked to, hey, bump it up. These are our own valuations. Gregory Miller is a appraiser for over 30 years, impeccable credentials, and I just want to put that on the record that we are not asked to ever hit a number, ever. As a matter of fact, we and the assessor disagree quite a few times, quite the opposite. So I just want to put that on the record for over a comment that the taxpayer mentioned. The property on Toledano, interestingly about this property, that the Board of Review notes indicated that they were going to reduce this property to $750,000. Our initial analysis was $842,800. We don't know what happened. The documentation that we got from the Board of Review did not make an adjustment to $750,000, so it stayed at $842,800. We completed an appraisal. That appraisal came in at $716,500, which is actually south of the $750 the Board Review had put in their internal notes. The taxpayer presented estimates of $173,250. Typically on these estimates, it's not 100% of the estimate, typically a cost of cure. But even if you took 100% of the estimate, that would bring the value to $669,550. And in appraisal, we have an average. We don't have an average minus. We have a good, we don't have a good plus. So when you're looking at these adjustments, the tax commission, the appraiser or any appraiser has to then decipher upon the disclosures of the MLS, the photos, and the information that's readily available to them to make a decision on what warrants the adjustment. I believe Mr. Miller's value of $716,500, it's fair. It is nearly accounting for 82% of the taxpayer's own provided estimate. We feel that the 500,000 is just slightly south. Well, not slightly, but considerably south of where we would have landed, we did land on our revised value.
Thank you. Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, good morning, Joshua Laverne, LTC appraiser. I inspected and appraised the property located at 1436 Toledano Street. The sales comparison was the only applicable approach utilized in my analysis. The approach produced a value of $500,000 with $192,000 attributed to the undisputed land and $308,000 to the improvement.
Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Laverne. If you would, sir, just on your comparables, in noting your neighborhoods, the tax property is noted to be in the Turo neighborhood. You have one on Jefferson for Ferret neighborhood, one on Joseph for Ferret neighborhood, and the third being the Turo neighborhood. Could you confirm that if you would?
Yes, that's taken from the assessor's website as what the assessment area they show.
And your proximity to subject on those Ferret neighborhoods in comparison to Turo is plus or minus 2 miles, almost 3
Yeah,
miles?
Yes, sir. I elected to expand my range given the condition issues of the subject property. So I wanted to find similar comparables with the condition issues. That's why the range was expanded.
So I have a question for the taxpayer. Would you consider your neighborhood comparable, given its location, to a Ferret that's on the other side of, I guess, the other side of Claiborne?
I believe the houses are very similar, and it's fair to put those in the comparables.
For the assessor's office, can you speak to the change in neighborhood from something off of St. Charles Avenue, which I believe the taxpayer's property is bound by St. Charles and Britannia, to something on the other side of Claiborne Avenue?
Our agreement is typically historically property south on the riverside in New Orleans, which south of St. Charles would be a different neighborhood than going north of St. Charles. I think if you're going to expand, you would expand south of St. Charles Avenue. I believe Mr. Leone is familiar with that area and would probably agree with that.
I believe all my comparables are in the same neighborhood.
That your comps are all in the Turo neighborhood is what you're
They're
referring to?
all in the, whatever neighborhood I'm in, they're extremely close, I believe. Yes. Well, one might be Lower Garden District, but it would fall on the correct side of St. Charles or Claiborne. Those three addresses are very close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can the Orleans Parish Assessor clarify what the value you have on the table now?
Our revised value is $716,500.
Thank you. Any other questions by the commission? Do I have a motion?
Call for a motion to accept the Orleans Parish revised assessment of $192,000 on land, $524,000 on the building, $716,500 total.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there
Chairman,
any
so-
objection to the motion?
I believe the math might have been off on that one. Just want to confirm that. I have the improvements at 524,500 and the land would be 192. I believe you said 524. Just want to make sure we clarify the numbers.
So just to clarify, we have a a land value of $192,000, and we have improvement value of $524,500 for a total value of $716,500. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of John Bozier Jr. versus Assessor Errol G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-76177.
Good morning.
Good
You can
morning.
Go ahead.
My property, basically has severe foundational damage due to years of heavy construction that took place nearby on Jefferson Avenue. And then within recent years on my street that my house faces, Octavia Street. And they've replaced the utilities under both of those. The Jefferson Avenue construction took nearly 5 years, multiple problems that had to be reworked. My point is they used our side street, Clara, as an access road to the construction site for years. And I work at home. My office faces Jefferson Avenue and I can see Clara. Every time those heavy trucks, the machinery is passing by, it's not just a little bit of vibration. It would shake the house. I would be on video calls for work and they would see the camera shaking. It, as you can imagine, over many years, those vibrations build up. They start with small cracks and it gets worse and worse. So now the foundation has been found on the side of Clara to be destabilized. And so the cost of repair that I was quoted was around $250,000 because they would need to raise the house, demolish the foundation, and rebuild the foundation. So those are the main reasons I'm asking for the valuation I am. Also, last year, as in several previous years, the finding of the final ruling of the tax commission was found in my favor. And I feel like that's a strong precedent. Nothing has changed in the condition of my home at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
David Mahir, once again, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. The property is 2631 Octavia Street. 2601. I'm sorry. It's 2601 Octavia Street. The analysis for this quadrennial landed our value at 481,900. Thank you. The board review lowered the value to 470,000. Our independent analysis landed at 446. And the tax commission appraisal is 295. We have in my instance, in my eyes, we have a very, very good comp used by both appraisers. 2631 Octavia, which is approximately 4 houses down, sold for 510,000. It is comp 1 and the tax commission appraisal, and I believe it is comp 1 in our appraisal as well.
Yes.
The biggest discrepancy is on this. There was a big adjustment made for this property, but it was 4 houses down. And in researching this, I pulled this from the MLS disclosure. I'll read it to you. It says, "Are you aware of any defects regarding the following?" This is for the comp, 2631. Are you aware of any defects? For the roof? Yes. The porches? Yes. The steps? Yes. The foundation? Yes. The basement? Yes. The railings? Yes. This is 4 houses down from the subject. Has similar influence, similar damages. We felt that if you would have just not made that adjustment, our values would be very, very, very similar. In reviewing this, we did find in our analysis that there is a square footage discrepancy. Our data shows 1530. The tax commission received a sketch of some sort for 1242. And using the revised sketch, I have come up with a revised value of 362,000.
You want to give us the breakdown of that?
I'll have to do the math on that. Yeah.
While you do that, let's hear from the LTC appraiser.
Art Gillespie with the Tax Commission. The sketch of some sort was measured by me a few years ago. It's 1,242 square feet, and that's accurate. The sales that I used, 2631 Octavia Street, the one that Mr. Mejia was speaking about, was the first comp that I used, and made appropriate adjustments, and then also had a copy of their appraisal as well. And my appraisal came in at 295,000, as stated by the taxpayer. It provided an independent cost to cure for roughly 250,000. So there's significant damage in this particular house. I have a copy of the appraisal that was done by the assessor's office, and they had some good sales in there, made the proper adjustments, and using their sales, I came up with a value of 290,000. So I feel very confident about the number for my 295,000, which, let's see, that breaks down to total value 295,000, land value 141,900, and improvement value of 153,100.
Thank you. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I guess for both LTC staff and the assessor's office, just acknowledging the common comp 2631 Octavia Street with an actual sales price of 510,000.
That is correct. 510,000 sold for 322.78 a square foot, 1580 square feet, so slightly larger.
Yes, sir, that's right. It's listed in average condition and MLS. No indication of foundation or other issues. And the photographs of that particular property in MLS show it in average condition, much better than the subject, I would say.
It's in the disclosures on the attachments. The structural disclaimer is in the disclosure.
Okay.
And it appears, Mr. Gillespie, that per your appraisal, that sale was on January 3rd of 2022.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So a question for the taxpayer, understanding the construction on Jefferson Avenue. When did that conclude?
Let's see, we moved in 2013, and within 6 months they started. And I don't think they finished until 2018 sometime, 2018 or 2019. There were a couple phases of the street that were done, and they didn't all finish at the same time, obviously. So it was many years.
And your street construction?
That just wrapped up probably 6 months ago, and it took, I would say, between 1.5 and 2 years.
And for coming back to you, Mr. Gillespie, in your appraisal, in reading the history going back to previous appeals, the pictures that are provided current, or are they just reused from your previous appraisal?
No, sir, these are current photographs of the interior of the subject.
And is the adjustment to from poor, fair to average on the same block, are you saying that are you taking into account the foundation issues into your reduced value?
For comp 1?
In general?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the poor fair condition of the subject is reflected in the adjustments of the comparables.
Any additional questions from the commission? You want to clarify the value that you gave us?
Yes, sir. After looking at the corrected square footage, our value would be 362 even, 141,900 on the land, 220,100 on the building.
Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the assessor's adjusted value. I've looked at the common comp on Octavia Street. The average between the assessor and the LTC, given conditions, is at 445, which is very close to their initial prayer. An average comp on all sales used is 348,000, which is very close to the 350. So based upon the assessor's delineation of land and improvements, I make a motion to approve the total of 350,000.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Could I make one comment, please?
Yes, sir.
About the comp that's down the street, I don't believe you could compare the foundation of that residence or home to mine. When I talk about the side street Clara that they use as the access road, that's the side of the street where our foundation has been destabilized. And it's within that wall, that chain wall is within 10 feet of the street that they use as the access road. And it's much, much closer to the major junction at Jefferson and Clara that has a major stormwater drainage junction underneath. So they had to dig down very much deeper than normal. I'd say 25 feet. They drove in pilings for months, years. They had to go back and redo it again because of mistakes. These vibrations, I don't believe they're anywhere comparable to what happened to my house as the one down the street. It's down the street a good way from the major activity. It's also protected by other houses. The soil density underneath my house has been severely compromised, and it's very evident by just the evidence of looking at the home and the condition it's in. We've had civil engineers come and do reports on it. They agree that side is destabilized and it cannot be repaired to code without raising the home, demolishing the foundation, and rebuilding, which is a extremely high cost to repair. So I would just like to please consider that the home down the street is really not comparable.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I would like to, and I'm not sure if this will be in the discussion, but I think we need to look at the LTC appraisal and take into what we know. And, you know, the comp that's being compared to, we don't actually know. We understand what they answered, but we don't know if that foundation's tore up like this gentleman's right here. But we know what he has because we actually see it. It's in front of us. And so I'm looking to go with the LTC appraisal.
Yep. Mr. Frazier? I don't have access to internet. If Mr. Gillespie has access to it, he could read the same structural disclaimer, which shows that it has the same defect. It says foundation, basement, roof, porches, steps, railings. It's 4 houses away. It's sold for $510. We feel like we're being very accommodating at the 362 because this property seems to have very similar, maybe not identical, but very, very similar issues. I do not have the MLS, so I can't read it for you, but if someone online has it.
I'm just gonna go off with the information we have. I'm not looking to add information. I'm going off what was presented to us. So if that was something,
Yes, sir.
it needed to be presented beforehand.
I understand. Just verbal testimony.
Okay. Motion that we're gonna have to, Commissioner Roman, are you willing to amend your motion or you want to proceed with yours?
I guess just to ask, in all due respect, Commissioner Fraser, so my first pass was to just use that common comp with where the assessor was starting, but then using all sales, not knowing the variety of properties, in particular to this one where the taxpayer is, come up with the 348 average. That's why I was going with the assessor's markdown to 350. I guess as a question, are you proposing land at 141.9 and improvement at 153.1 for a total of 295 as the LTC is presenting?
That's correct.
As a point of protocol, I either accept Mr. Frazier's
You can either
Pre-
accept the amendment to the motion, or we will vote on the motion as you have submitted to the commission.
I would like to vote on the motion as presented.
Okay. So we have a motion, and please, if you don't mind, Mr. Ryan, repeat the values of your motion.
I'm going to ask the assessor to repeat. I have the 350,000 in total. Certainly land is at 141,900.
I had 362 was my total, 141,900, 220,100 would be would be the revised value of the assessor's office.
So for clarification, we have a motion on the table of 362,000 with the described values, and we're going to do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Leone,
Yes.
Commissioner Romick,
Yes.
Commissioner Guidry, Commissioner Frazier,
No.
Chairman Roussel.
No.
We have 3 yeses and 1 no.
The motion is adopted at 362,000.
Sir, so the previous precedents of the tax commission have been thrown out, basically, their decisions.
I don't have information in front of me about what the
Uh,
previous commission did.
uh,
Submitted as part of our packet.
I did submit it, I'm sorry, sir, through the appeal.
Sorry, I missed it.
Also, the condition of our house was examined in court. We were part of a lawsuit to try to recoup the money, the repair money from the city. So we had professionals examining the condition of our home, and they agreed with what I'm putting forth. I'm just,
Through the tax commission or through the Board of Appeals?
sir,
You went through the Louisiana Tax Commission, or that decision was rendered by the Board of Appeals?
the Louisiana Tax Commission rendered the decision last year and also in, I believe, 4 previous years.
Thank you. That was not, once again, if I apologize if I missed that. I'm not sure that would have changed my vote, but we've made a motion and we've ruled.
Mr. Chair, if I may be out of order, but I have those materials in hand. I read through that, and I was curious as to this commission's responsibility to uphold a previous commission's decision. It was my understanding that with this year of reassessment, that we were not bound to that. That's why I was evaluating the property itself, the neighborhood itself, the comparables as such, and coming up with my motion.
Ms. Tucker?
If the commission sets a value during a quadrennial period, and that value should be carried forward. The current assessment is in a new quadrennial period. So the commission's not bound by a value determination. The previous quadrennial had a valuation date of January 1, 2019. The new valuation date is January 1st, 2023. So certainly not bound by the previous ruling.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Out of courtesy to the commission, is this new dialogue we have, anybody want to reconsider or change their vote? Hearing that, the motion is adopted as we passed. Thank you.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Rosemary C. Jones versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-73176.
Morning.
Commissioners. Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is M.A. She, and I'm the authorized taxpayer representative for Miss Rosemary Cole Jones. She is elderly and was unable to attend. If you could, just to give you a little context, if you would mind looking at page 3 of the LTC appraisal. Ms. Rosemary's home is in a neighborhood that sadly never recovered from Hurricane Katrina. So if you look at that picture, you can see that there are many more vacant lots than there are homes. It's still kind of a bereft neighborhood. If you, you can also see from that picture that her home is very small. It's 872 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And yet, the Orleans Parish Assessor gave it the highest appraisal of any other house on that block by far. Obviously, in comparing it to other appraisals on the block, fairness is not an issue. We understand that that's not relevant, but it does raise the question of the accuracy of the assessor's analysis of the houses on this block. So the most similar home to Miss Rosemary's is 1,126 square feet, and it was appraised at $84,000. Miss Rosemary's much smaller home was appraised at $168,000, almost exactly twice as much as the bigger home. If you look at the per square footage of the assessor's appraisals, the other 5 houses on the block range from 75 to 97 per square foot. Miss Rosemary's is 193 per square foot. So I would submit that the assessor's analysis is not supported by the facts on the ground. I do believe that the analysis of Mr. Laverne is supported by the facts and his comparables are comparable. And I would ask that that be accepted and the value be set at $110,000. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
David Mejia, once again, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. This property has a partial freeze on it. There's multiple owners, and I believe Ms. Jones herself is the one who has the greater percentage ownership. So there is a freeze in place. We've had a few of these in the past. We will uphold any value that's set. Our value is not that far off, 128 to 110. The taxpayer requests 122, but at the end of the day, there's a freeze assessment on here that the assessment is frozen. So the recipient, we could change the market, but the freeze it's frozen. She would have to relinquish that and reapply again if the value came out lower than what it's frozen at. But we will, of course, like we've had in the past, we'll honor any value that's set. And there's not a lot of reason to split hairs here, 110 to 128.
Good. Your appraisal is 168. Have you changed it?
Yeah, the sheet we have is 168,000.
This is the original value is 168,600. The revised value for the analysis was 128.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I still believe that the 110,000 is, if you look at the comparables, I don't have any comparables for the assessor's appraised value, but I still believe that the 110,000 is accurate, but I think we'd be willing to accept the 128. Just to note, the freeze is not obviously relevant here. You set the appraised value, not the assessed value. And just to add, the only half of the property is subject to the freeze. So this appraisal does apply to the other half of the property.
And I'm just to be clear, you just said you were willing to accept the 128,000?
Well, I don't think it's, well, yes,
Okay.
I do. Thank
Okay,
you.
so, and New Orleans Assessor's Office is willing to accept that as well?
Yes.
Okay. Being that we have agreement between the taxpayer and the assessors, I'd ask for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the agreement between the taxpayer's representative and the assessor's office for a total value of 128,000, land at 7,800, improvements at 115,200.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on this motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The final appeal we have on the docket for today is the appeal of Sheldon P. Cotto versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-71021. And the taxpayer is not present.
Okay, since the taxpayer is not present, we'll hear from New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to revisit the previous, I was reading off of the assessors prayed for. And if I'm checking the math, 7,800 for land improvements at 115,200 is actually a total of 123,000. Could my fellow commissioners check my math there? It's presented in total on the assessor's appeal prayer sheet of a total of 128, but the math doesn't work. And I think my initial read was in doing that math, or at least building my own table, came to 123,000. I compared that to the taxpayer's requested value of 122,998. I just want to make sure it was agreed to. If it's 128, that I think what I prescribed doesn't add up to 128.
Well, I was in agreement with what the assessor came up with, so I'm sorry, I didn't do the math. That was my mistake,
That's
but
fine.
the assessor's assessed value.
128,000, I guess my motion to appeal or present back before the commissioners is land at 7,800 and improvements at 120,200 for a total of 128,000.
Yeah, we will take the motion we just passed and amend it to put the correct totals in. Is there any discussion?
So it ends up at 128,000. Oh, okay, I was
Any
hearing it the wrong
objection
way,
to the motion?
128,000.
Hearing none, motion is amended with those new totals.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Back to the appeal of Mr. Cotto, Mr. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
David Mejia, once again, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. I've lost some sleep over this one at night. This is a difficult property to appraise. It's a condo, 1001 Julia. This is a premier condo, 1859 square foot is the building square footage of this condo, which is the higher level for this unit, for this development, I should say. The C units were all put on at a uniformed improvement value of $1,279,500. The Board of Review affirmed that number. Our independent analysis came in at $1,211,000. In researching this, we also came in and we noticed there was two Board of Review reductions, one to $1,250,000 even, and one to $1,223,300. So there was a little bit of movement, but they all stayed around the 1.2 value. So we're requesting the lower of the amount, which would be the 1.211, just to keep the units in the development somewhat uniformed. I lost some sleep on this. I'm not sure if the governor, Mr. Wallace, lost some sleep on this one, but it was it's a difficult one to appraise. There's car storage, parking spaces, cabanas, storage units that are condoed out separately but are included in the sales, and it takes a lot of work to iron it out. So I think we're close, but it's just a lot of moving parts in this development.
Okay, can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, sir. George Wallace, Louisiana Tax Commission. I did appraise the property on March 5th, 2024, had an uncontested land value of $29,500. I used 3 sales in the same complex that were all from 2022. Had an adjusted value, final value of $1,100,000. That would be a total breakdown of $1,100,000 total, $29,500 for the land, $1,070,500 for improvements.
Thank you. Questions from the commission?
Just one question for the assessor. Per your prayer document, you're presenting that the taxpayer is requesting a value totaling, I guess this is where I have discrepancy. What is the taxpayer requesting?
I have the taxpayer requesting $1,160,500. My colleague Russell indicated that he had requested something different to the tax commission. So the values may be separate than what he requested at the board review than what he requested to you guys. The board review, he requested a 1,160,000 even.
And I believe we have 1,160,500.
So $500 difference.
So we have a request from the taxpayer of 1,160,500. We have an LTC staff appraisal of 1,100,000, and the New Orleans Assessor's Office is 211,000.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody's got the same numbers. Any questions from the commission?
I do. And it's just to clarify the land, is it 29,000 even or 29,500?
29,500.
Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the taxpayer's request, land of 229,500, improvements at 1,131,000, for a total of 1,160,500.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a refund request. Mr. Hoffman?
Mr. Chairman and commission members, we have a refund request on the day's docket. We get about, I don't know, 6 to a dozen of these a year. The tax commission is authorized to consider refund request under 47-2132 for taxes paid in error. Procedurally, when these refund requests come in, we transmit them to the assessor to get some feedback and some information, get the assessor's position. Historically, if the assessor disagrees with the refund request for one reason or another, the commission summarily denies it. If the assessor approves it, we generally approve it. If the assessor doesn't take a position, then it gives y'all an opportunity to kind of look at it and make a determination. These refund requests are for multiple tax years from a taxpayer called Blake International out of Terrebonne Parish for assets that were originally rendered to the assessor as taxable by mistake. It was discovered subsequently that the assets should not have been rendered. They were not taxable assets. There was a correction made for 2017, 18, and 19. However, for the years previous to that, the assessor was not initially in agreement. The taxpayer went to court and was able to get an adjudication judgment declaring these assets to be exempt. So the taxpayer has resubmitted the refund request for those previous years, 2009 through 2016, and the assessor now takes no position as the assessor agreed, at least in the court, that the assets were exempt. There are some properties included in the refund request the assessor disagrees with. For example, there's some inventory equipment assets, as well as one particular rig associated with the drilling rigs that was in the documentation submitted to you. My recommendation, based on the historical position of the commission, is that you approve the refund request for those assets the assessor does not disagree with, but we deny it for those assets the assessor disagrees with. We'll have to do some math on the back end of this to determine what the actual amounts are. And I'll work with LTC staff on that before we transmit it to the collector, if y'all are in agreement. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Just to clarify, Mr. Hoffman, the assessor, typically we approve the ones the assessors agree with. In this case, the assessor is not objecting to that these assets were not taxable. He's not endorsing it or denying the refund. He is agreeing that these assets should not have been taxed.
That's correct. For tax years 2009 through 2016.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission? Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the refunds as presented, calculations to follow.
That'll work.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman.
Hall. Is there any other matters to come before the commission? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 12:24 PM.